So you want to know if it's worth it to be a 1099 worker. Should you take a job with a high salary but little to no benefits? Is it worth it as a new grad PA? Well, let's do a deep dive into the world of 1099 jobs. We'll start with some facts and then we'll play with some numbers. So let's get to it. Fact number one, 1099 workers are classified as independent contractors, not employees. And as a 1099 worker, you won't get the same benefits as a traditional employee. Traditional W-2 employees get health insurance, paid time off, retirement savings plan, and professional reimbursements. That's a lot of benefits. Now, you're probably wondering, do these benefits really matter? Do I really need them? And how much money am I missing out by not having these benefits? Well, let's do the math. Let's start with health insurance. So most employers offer health benefits to their employees. And typically, average health insurance cost through an employer is about $75,000 for an individual plan and about $21,000 for a family coverage. And typically, the employer pays most of that cost, about 80%, leaving you, the employee, to pay about 20% of that cost through your paycheck. So if you're a W-2 employee, your employer will offer this plan, this $7,500 plan, and you are subject to pay about $1,400 a year through your paycheck deductions for your health insurance. So not a bad gig at all. But if you're a 1099 employee, you would have access to health insurance through your employer. This means you have to pay out of pocket for your own health insurance, which can cost anywhere from like $6,000 to $10,000 a year, depending on what kind of coverage you need. So it's pretty costly. Now, of course, if you're covered under your parents' insurance or your spouse insurance, then this wouldn't be a problem for you. Now, let's move on to PTO, paid time off. Paid time off. As a W-2 employee, you are offered paid time off, and most PAs get 3 to 4 weeks of PTO per year. On an average $100,000 PA salary, as a W-2 employee, 4 weeks of paid time off would be approximately equivalent to $7,700 a year in gross income. And you can calculate this number by dividing the annual salary by the number of work days in a year, assuming 5 days a week, then multiplying that by the number of PTO days. Here's the breakdown if you need to see it visually. So this means that 4 weeks of PTO can be worth a lot. That's about $7,700. And if your salary is higher than $100,000, that means your PTO package is even higher than that number. It could be up to $10,000 or even $15,000 or $20,000, depending on your salary and your income. Now, let's talk about your retirement plan. As a W-2 employee, your employer typically offers some sort of retirement plan. That could be a 401k or a simple IRA. And most of these plans offer some sort of employer match, anywhere from 3 to 6%. Let's say your employer offers you a 4% match. And if your annual salary is $100,000, a 4% match is about $4,000. This means that if you contribute 4% of your salary into your 401k, your employer will match the same 4%. So if you contribute $4,000, your employer will also contribute $4,000 into your 401k. That's a free $4,000 for you in your retirement account every single year. Now, what about professional reimbursements? Well, according to APA in 2019, the national average for employer reimbursements for professional dues is around $2,500 per year. This includes reimbursements for items like your state license, your NCCPA certification fees, your DEA registration, or your CME expenses. That number to me seems really, really low, only $2,500. In my experience, my employers have paid about $5,000 or even $6,000 in professional dues, but whatever. Let's go with APA and let's go with the lower end of $2,500 a year. So that's an extra $2,500 added to your compensation package. Now, if you add up all those numbers, it comes up to roughly $22,000. That's $22,000 worth of benefits that you won't receive as a 1099 employee. And that number is actually on the lower end because a good benefits package can actually be valued anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000, depending on your employer, your salary, and your years of experience. Fact number 2, 1099 workers are responsible for their own taxes. You are considered an independent contractor, which means you are your own boss. Fancy. You have your own business and you are the employer. Now, the job that you accept, the job that you're working for, they're not your employer. Therefore, they're not responsible for withholding taxes from your paycheck. Instead, you are responsible for calculating and paying your own taxes, including state and federal taxes and self-employment taxes. So you're paying taxes on both ends, as employee and as employer. Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security tax. So let's do some math. Let's say you actually have a job as a 1099 worker and your annual salary is $100,000. Know that after taxes, your actual salary might only be $70,000 or $80,000 because you have to pay those damn taxes. And the general rule of thumb is to save at least 30% of your income for taxes. But this really can vary depending on your specific tax situation, where you work, where you live, and how much taxes you can write off. Fact number 3, 1099 workers have a much higher liability risk compared to W-2 employees. Well, why is that? One of the key differences between a 1099 worker and a W-2 employee is the level of legal protection. As a 1099 worker, you have higher risk because you're not protected by federal or state employment laws. This means that if you experience any kind of discrimination or mistreatment in your workplace, you're not gonna be able to fight back because you have little to no rights. Also, you don't really enjoy the benefits of termination protection. What does that mean? Well, we talk a lot about this in the Happy PA Academy about termination rights and policies. W-2 employees are protected against abuse and any unjust termination by federal and state laws. But 1099 workers, you don't have that protection. So that means that your employment contract that you sign with the person that you're working for, that can be terminated any time because there's no federal or state protection, which means you have a lot less job security because your employer doesn't or isn't required to give you a 30 or 90-day termination notice. And I should also mention that as a 1099 worker, you're also personally liable for any malpractice claims or any legal issue that may arise from your work. So if you're sued for malpractice, you have to pay for your own attorney and all the legal fees because you're not protected under your employer. And technically, your employer isn't even obligated to offer you malpractice insurance, which means you have to pay out of pocket. But that's not really true because most 1099 employers, they do offer some sort of malpractice insurance for their workers, but not all of them do. So you have to be very careful to find out whether or not your employer is going to cover you and give you those malpractice coverage, because if not, you have to pay out of pocket, and that's very, very costly. You don't want to work without malpractice insurance. And I just want to point out that if you don't have malpractice insurance and something does go wrong, you actually have to pay for those damages and those legal fees. And this can really put your personal assets at risk. Your savings, your investments, or the investment properties you have, that's a problem. Okay, so now knowing all these facts, you might think it's still worth it to take the higher paying job as a 1099 worker. And you might be right, so let's do some math and compare and contrast. Let's say you're offered a job and you can choose between a 1099 position or a W-2 position. The 1099 position will offer you $70 an hour with no benefits. That's a pretty high paying salary for a new grad. And the W-2 position will offer you a $100,000 salary, 4 weeks PTO, health insurance, a 401k plan with a 4% match, and $2,000 in professional reimbursement. Now, which is the better deal and why? I want to know your thoughts. Comment below. Now, let's break down the math for that 1099 job offer. So $70 an hour, assuming 40-hour work week and 72 weeks a year. That salary would be about $145,000 a year. That's a pretty damn good salary for a new grad PA with no experience. $145,000. But let's not be too excited because let's break it down. As a 1099 worker, you will be responsible for paying your own taxes, self-employment taxes, which includes the employer and the employee portion of the FICA tax, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security tax. So this is about like 15% of your individual income, which will come up to about $22,000 of your annual salary of $145,000. But you also have to pay for health insurance, and again, let's say it's $7,000 a year. And you have to pay professional dues, about $3,000 a year for your CME, your license reimbursement, your DA, etc. And you also might have to consider paying for malpractice insurance, any kind of legal fees. So if you add all of that up, a 1099 job with a salary of $145,000, it's actually only $122,000 a year after taxes. Now keep in mind that you only make $145,000 a year if you work 40 hours a week every single week of the year, because you have no PTO, you don't get paid for holidays, sick, or CME days, so that's a little tricky. And let's break the math down for the W-2 job offer. With an annual salary of $100,000, we can calculate the hourly rate, which is about $48, assuming you work 40 hours a week. Now, because you have 40 hours of PTO, that's 160 hours times by 48, that's gonna be about roughly $7,700 worth of PTO money. And with your health insurance, since your employer is paying most of the coverage, they're probably paying about $6,000 a year. And for your 401k, they'll give you about $4,000 in match with a 4% match. And remember, we said the professional reimbursement, you get $2,000 a year. So if you add up all the salary and the benefits, you get roughly $118,000 a year. And that's not a bad number. That's a pretty happy number, $18,000 in total benefits. Now, let's compare the two jobs. The W-2 job offer has a total compensation package of $118,000, while the 1099 job offer has a total compensation of $123,000. But that doesn't include any malpractice or legal fees. But let's say that you took that 1099 job and you went 4 weeks of PTO. Now that compensation package is no longer worth $122. It's now $112,000. That's a lower package now compared to a W-2 job. And we haven't even accounted for the professional fee reimbursement, the legal fees, the malpractice insurance fee. All these little fees really add up. It can cost you thousands of dollars out of pocket as a 1099 job. And as a new grad PA, I would only suggest that you take a 1099 job if you're going to earn 30 to 40% more in the overall compensation package. I'm not talking about the base salary, the overall compensation package, because you really have to offset, set up your own benefits and taxes. So that means that you don't want to take a job that is limited to $70 an hour. You might want to consider a job that's maybe $90 or $100 an hour at the bare minimum. Now, knowing all that information, should you take a 1099 job as a new grad PA? Would you take it? Me, personally, I wouldn't, because I like to play things safe. But everyone's situation is different and you have to make the best decision for yourself. But I will say that as a new grad PA, there's a lot of unknown territory to navigate because it's just a really awkward phase in your life. You're still trying to figure out who you are, trying to figure out how to manage your student loan debt, and you really have to worry about job security because you have this massive amount of debt, and you really don't understand how taxes work, and you don't know what to do with your retirement accounts or how to invest your money. But on top of that, you're really not completely confident in your role as a PA and all the legal aspects that come with it, like malpractice and legal disputes, and all these things can really have serious impact on your career. So I would suggest taking the time to get a W-2 job and familiarize yourself with the role and the responsibility as a PA and truly understand the ins and outs of the profession, all the hidden costs that comes with maintaining your license. Now, after that, if you're an experienced PA and you don't really need job security or protection because you don't have that student loan debt anymore, or maybe you don't need a health insurance plan because you're covered under your spouse's plan, or maybe you don't want a full-time job because you don't need it, then maybe in that scenario, a 1099 job might be a great fit for you. Ultimately, it's up for you to decide the pros and cons and make the decision that's best for yourself. But as someone who's been in the game for a while, I suggest just erring on the side of caution as a new grad PA. I mean, you really have your whole career ahead of you, so take the time to learn and grow before taking on a really potentially risky job. And that's all I have for you today. So if you have any questions, please send me a comment or DM me on Instagram. I would love to connect with you. And with that said, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching. Bye, guys.